Asok b'divrei Torah. Asok b'divrei Torah means to engage in the words or the things of Torah. So we say Amen.
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 So, the
Suze, Rabbi, can you ask people to mute, please?
Okay, people mute unless you're talking, I guess, which will be very soon. I'm going to be sharing stuff with you, and my theme this year for the first, several months is rebels, harlots, heroines, and rebels. But I want to start with something that's male and female, and something that I only learned recently. And that is from the original creation of the human being in the Torah. And we're going to look at the quote in a minute, but it's very ambiguous. It says, God says, and let us make the Adam. Ha-Adam. Ha means the in Hebrew. The Adam. Adam comes from the word Adama, which means earth. And so it's let me make the human creature in our own image. And God made the Adam in his own image. And then it says male and female, he created them, plural. And so there's a lot of discussion about what does the them mean and why them, not him. I mean, the second story, it's very clear. There's Adam, and that's male. And then there's the woman, Isha, who ultimately takes the name Chava, which I don't know why they translated to Eve, because Chava comes from the word chai, life. And Chava really means mother of all living things. And so that's the name of the first female, but that's story two. In the first story, it's male and female, he created them. And what I discovered in the Talmud, there are mentions of 6 possible genders / sexual identities for humans. These are recognized in the Talmud. And we talk about gay, we talk about binary, we talk about, trans, both or one or the other, whatever, they're in the Talmud. So I'm going to share that with you and show you what they are. Where is it? It is here. Okay, now where are you all? Here. So, and in the future, I'm going to send you texts ahead of time. I want to stretch this out now so you're all in it. Okay, I can see all of you, I think. Yes, or most of you. And it says 6 sexes in the Talmud. So when was the Talmud written? The Talmud was written between 100 and 600 CE, that we'd say AD, but CE, we say Common Era, and the whole Talmud, but the Gemara, which is the part we're talking about, was written, it says 1st to 8th centuries, a little bit later. So let's look at what it says. I'm going to just read the intro, and then I'm going to invite different ones of you to read the 6 genders or sexual identities in the Talmud. So it says, whatever tendencies we might have to think about that gender studies is a concept new to the world after feminism, the rabbis of the Talmud have been deeply fascinated by the exceptions and margins of gender for well over 1,500 years. Okay, the rabbis created Jewish law in a male-dominated society, so it's unsurprising that rabbinic law treats the male as the norm and the female by definition as an anomaly. There are different laws for male and female. Women aren't required to fulfill any mitzvahs that are circumscribed by time. If you have to do something at a certain time, most of the mitzvot women don't have to do. The understanding is that they're taking care of the children in the house and they don't have to pray 3 times a day. They don't have to study or whatever. We could see it as, a gift or taking something away, but they're different. They're saying different. Women, at least, though, have a role. that is obvious to the sages. They are exempt from certain commandments, while Jewish men are obligated to all commandments under most circumstances. So what is to be done with those who do not fit neatly into those categories? So the fact that they even saw that there were other categories between male and female, that the Talmudic rabbis saw, that is pretty amazing. And actually, I was just speaking to a doctor yesterday, a woman doctor who said she did a seminar because she's a dermatologist and they do surgery for like sex changes. They taught, so it was basically on that, but she said, apparently always 1 in 350 people have been transgender all through history. 1 in 350 people. That's what she learned and she shared with me. It's like 1 in, I don't know, 10, is it, that are homosexual or lesbian, but 1 in 350. So they've always existed in cultures. And so the rabbis saw 6 different possibilities. Now we're going to read about them in a minute, but at that time, they determined it by physical only qualities. But obviously, the word is trait, which can be read, as a physical trait or as a psychological trait. We can expand that idea of trait, but here they are. So who would like to read the first one? Who would like to read the first one? Okay, Doris.
Androgynous, is that what you want me to start with?
Yes.
An intersex person having some aspects of both male and female genitalia. 149 references in the Mishnah and Talmud, 1st to 8th century CE, 350 in classical Midrash and Jewish law codes, 2nd to the 16th centuries CE.
So that's 500 mentions of an intersex person, and they say having genitalia, but also possibly having male and female qualities. So that would be today a person who is, feels that they're, what's the word, where they feel like they're sometimes one, sometimes the other. Actually met a rabbi, a woman, she doesn't go as by a woman. And then that kind of person today would be referred to as them. They like to be referred to as they and them because they feel like they are both. So the rabbis saw that. Now the next one, who would like to read the next one? And any questions or comments, please, jump in. Would somebody like to read the next one? Come on, Sue.
I'll read it.
Okay, wait, I already called on Sue, but you can do the third one, Donna.
dear.
Okay, Ilonit, literally the little ram, a female who has not shown physical signs of typical sexual maturity by the age of 20, or some say 18, presumed infertile, often possessing masculine characteristics. 80 references in the Mishnah and Talmud, 40 in classical Midrash and Jewish law codes.
So this might be a person, somebody who's born a girl and she moves toward the more masculine behavior. I mean, I actually had a student, I'll never forget this. I was a teacher, a principal of the Hebrew school in New Jersey when I was in my 20s. And when I first got there, there was this child named Noel, Noel, and short hair, very sweet, loved me, followed me around. And I didn't know for 6 months that Noel was a girl. I thought Noel was a boy. She was 9. I couldn't tell, or 10 or something. So, and then I think ultimately she came out, as lesbian, or I don't even know what after that. But it was interesting that the qualities and the rabbis recognized this. Okay, Donna, the next one.
Ish.
Ish.
A man eligible husband, one whose fertility is not in question and has shown some secondary sex characteristics by around age of
So
13.
that's your normal,
Typical.
your familiar male. That's your male. Okay, and then I'm gonna move you over here so you can see on this side.
Can I ask a question? Can
Yes.
you hear me?
Yes.
For the Ilanit,
Yes.
is there a pronoun?
Okay, so it seems like it's feminine, but we're gonna read, I think it's considered, neat comes to feminine. So maybe at that time it was, but maybe it switched at a certain point. But at the moment, the word elonit, when you hear neat, that's feminine. But we're going to look at some rabbinic texts for a person who is neither one or the other, and they have some mitzvahs they can perform as a man. They can be either have a wedding as a woman or a wedding as a man. They can perform certain mitzvot and others they can't. They have more than a woman, but less than a man.
Oh my God.
Okay, Isha, who wants to read Isha?
I'll do it.
Okay. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Isha, a woman eligible wife, one whose fertility is not in question and has shown some secondary sex characteristics by around age 12 and is clearly developing by age 12 and a half.
So that is a regular, what we know as a gender norm female. Okay, now there's this thing called saris. Saris. Penina, why don't you read about it?
Part of it is covered up, by the way. Can you bring it over so we can see the whole?
You can bring it over.
Move it over, I can move you over. How's that?
I'm trying to bring it over.
Pull all the pictures of people way over to the right. And
To the
it'll
right.
yeah,
Okay.
and it'll fill the screen.
Oh,
Okay. How's that?
I haven't, I'll, better, I got it now. I've got it now.
Go ahead.
Thank you. No, back where I started from. Okay, thank you. I think it's working.
Oh, so which one is reading what?
Saris.
Saris is how do you say?
Okay, Saris, first of all, I want you to know that it showed up in the Bible at the Megillat Esther, the story of Esther.
Right, it's a eunuch. It's considered
Yeah. Okay, so which paragraph I'm beginning?
this one right here, Saris.
Saris, okay. A male who has not shown signs of typical sexual maturity by the age of 20. A eunuch, 156 references in Mishnah and Talmud, 379 in classical Midrash and Jewish law codes. Saris Chama, congenital sterility, is a male, e.g. a testicularity.
A testicle.
Right.
A testicularity, okay. Saris Adam, a castrated male, one made sterile intentionally or via accidental injury.
Okay, so this is a male who's feminine, really. Feminine, and a eunuch is one, it's not the only thing, but it's a person who's feminine, just like the Ilonit is a female who's masculine. A saris is someone who's feminine. And then there's this one, the tum. Risa, why don't you read the tum?
I will, but I don't know why you say Cerise, because it says it's a male who has not shown signs. Doesn't mean he's female.
No, I said feminine.
Feminine. It doesn't even mean feminine. He can be asexual.
Right, that's what I was.
Right.
No,
and
it was done.
Okay, all right.
He's not feminine. He's just not male.
It was done intentionally to protect the harem. So
Yeah,
the
Yes,
word-
I know.
Right.
Sometimes you're born like that.
Sometimes you're born.
Okay.
In Judaism, you're not allowed to castrate.
Right.
Oh,
Tum. A person of indeterminate gender, one whose genitals are obscured or not clearly male or female. 181 references in Mishnah and Talmud, 335 in classical Midrash and Jewish law codes.
So now look at this. This is in the Talmud. Rabbi Yitzchak said, for what reason were our forefathers initially infertile? Rabbi Ami said, Abraham and Sarah were originally tumim. In other words, they had no genitals, or they had obscure genitals. People whose sexual organs are concealed and not functional, as it is stated, look to the rock from where you were hewn and to the hole of the pit from where you were dug. And it is written in the next verse, look to Abraham, your father, and to Sarah, who bore you, which indicates that sexual organs were fashioned for them, signified by the words hewn and dug over the course of time. So this is a midrash where they're saying that Abraham and Sarah were, I wonder if they think all of our original matriarchs were tumim or infertile, and that God then made them fertile. And then Rabbi Nachman said, our mother Sarah was initially sexually an undeveloped woman, an elonit, as is stated, and Sarah was barren, she had no child. The superfluous word, she had no child. Why, if you say barren, do you need to add she had no child? Because doesn't barren imply that? And then the rabbis are always saying every single word, every sentence has a deeper meaning. So saying if they have to say both, she was barren, she had no child, the word she had no child indicates she did not even have a place, a womb for a child.
Rabbi,
Yes.
were the words tumtum and elonit, were they in the Talmud?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
These are all, they said it was in the Talmud like 100 and how many times?
Well, they weren't just describing it, they were actually using the word.
Yes.
181 references.
One.
They knew these words well. Okay, so listen to this. The discussion in Yevamot, which is a section of the Talmud, is typical of the Talmudic process, attempting to clarify which people must observe which aspects of Jewish law. Generally, tumim are treated like women, and androgynoi are treated between the legal categories of men and women. So who wants to read these rules? Because they are hilarious or fascinating.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, Merle, why don't you read? For example, up right here.
Okay, I see it.
Okay. For example, tumim, is that right?
Yeah.
And women cannot fulfill the obligation to blow the shofar for themselves or for others. Androgyny can fulfill their obligation for themselves, but not for others. A man, however, can blow the shofar for himself and for others. In this way, the rabbis of the Talmud managed to include intersex Jews into their system of Jewish law and ritual participation.
Okay,
For
so then there was a
Israelite
discussion. Wait, you don't have to go there. But they said, now who brings, they go into Sukkot, and then who can bring the first fruits? Men and women, but who else can bring them? And it says, an androgynous who presents both male and female is in some ways like men, in some ways like women. In some ways, they are both women and men and women. In other ways, they're neither like men or women. And they let you, where's the thing where they said about getting married? Wait, I don't want to go through this whole thing. Well, another commentary is when it says male and female, he created them. The male and female is like saying near and far or old and young. It's everything in between. Male and female is included. So,
I have a question, Rabbi.
yes.
My question is, how
Yeah.
do they know the categories that these men and women fell into? Did they have physical examinations when they were young children? I mean, how did they know that?
Okay, well, some of it I think was behavioral, but yes, I think the parents would know, but for sure, some of it they know because there would be a bris or a not bris and they would see something then. But people went to the bathhouse, people, there were the mikvah, if females went to the mikvah, there would be places where they would be naked. But so there would be places for them to be recognized. I want to conclude this part because I want to talk about Eve also and something else, is that in Jewish tradition, they allowed for the possibilities of these different of a transgender. In Kabbalah, it says, and I'm reading right here, we have opinions that suggest that Jacob's daughter Dinah was conceived with the soul of a man, but through divine intercession was transitioned into a woman. And the Kabbalah teaches that Abraham's son Isaac was ensouled as a woman, but born as a man for the purpose of carrying forward the family's covenant with God. The fact that the Kabbalah recognizes that your soul could be different from your physical body is incredibly advanced.
Wow, that's amazing.
They didn't condemn them. They didn't, kick them out of the community. They said, oh, if she's masculine or he's feminine. First, it was these physical qualities, but they went on to say, well, then their souls are different. They have a different kind of soul. So there's a huge amount of tolerance for this gender fluidity, in all stemming from this very first sentence. And I translated it this way: and God created the Adam, in his own image, in the image of God, he created it. Because even though it says him, in Hebrew, him means it as well as him. Male and female, he created them. So it's pretty fascinating just to look at this. I have, but I'm not going to, if anyone wants, I'm not going to share it. I have rabbis from Orthodox, Sephardic, Conservative, Reform, Reconstructionist, and Independent, their points of view on this passage. And if you would like to read that, let me know and I will email it to you. Sue, you want it?
Yeah.
No. I had a question.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is, it seems like in this particular genre, they are very tolerant of differences. But when in the Torah, when it comes to sex between men or women or this and that, they're very intolerant. Does the Talmud speak to that and allow for more flexibility in the relations between men and so forth?
The Talmud doesn't speak about relations between men and men.
Okay.
That homosexual relationship is considered, is written in first of all, the Torah was written way before the Talmud, and everything evolves. We know that it says in the Torah, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And the Talmud says it never meant that you should poke out an eye or cut off, knock out a tooth. It meant you compensate with monetary value for the eye and for the tooth. In the same way, the rabbis expanded their understanding, and then, in the Maimonides expanded it more, as we keep expanding our understanding according to the times we live.
Olivia, in the den?
I'm sorry? I didn't hear the question. No, okay. The other thing is that there is an interpretation, Sue and others, that where it says a man is not supposed to sleep with a man, they're really talking about male prostitutes for religion, like religious sacred prostitution between, and not necessarily, dealing with homosexuality, but anything that happened in the pagan world was forbidden, and that was common in the pagan world. There were, in fact, there's a thing in the Book of Kings where there's a time, I've talked about it before, in the time of Josiah, when the Israelites were living incredibly debauched lives as a nation, like Rome in a way, and they had male prostitutes in the temple. And the book, so there's a suggestion that they were referring to that. And when we look at all these other relationships, they are allowed to be married. All of these other categories are allowed to be married. I don't know that they go into their sexual interactions. So that's as much as I know now. But, or ultra Orthodox will just quote the Torah and say you're not allowed. They don't. Yeah.
I find it so interesting that the two stories exist, and that if the first one was allowed to stay in, because I'm sort of thinking about if the second story was written to kind of nullify the first, then why did the first story even wasn't it kicked out? I don't know.
Okay, well, if you look at the first story, it's just not about man and woman. It's about the whole beautiful creation. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. That whole story is only in chapter 1. The whole folding of the cosmos and the universe, and Shabbat is in that chapter. So it's a pretty important chapter. And the rabbis justify it by saying, oh, the second chapter is just more detail of the first chapter. It says God made them, but now in the second chapter, we see how they were made. That first there was man, and then, they say they just say it's more detail. So they were able to, but both of them were so well known and that they just couldn't get rid of one. But I think our whole understanding of Judaism would be so different if we didn't have the first chapter, with the idea that light was created first, and that God blessed the animals and God blessed man and woman in the first. There's so many beautiful things in the first chapter. We would be bereft of a lot. So I want to go now to this thing about Eve, and I want to ask you a question. Hold on a minute.
I have a question too.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yes.
My question is, am I correct in assuming that all of these 6 groups could not reproduce?
Probably.
Some of them, but God said, go forth and multiply, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
So how did this all work out?
Well, I mean, these are rarities, and some Kabbalists say these are things that need to be repaired, but not everything is perfect, and some things don't come out exactly the way they're meant to, just like in nature, but doesn't mean that we reject them or kick them out. We still accept them in the community. This was, not the norm, but they were acknowledged and recognized. I'm assuming they couldn't reproduce, but actually it's not clear, because here it says, and I'll find it, it says that they could marry.
Yeah.
So if they could marry, then maybe they did reproduce, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it? I know I read it. It was like, hold on, let me move this.
I saw that about marry, but I just married and not reproduce as well.
Doesn't say that. The sages explain from female rabbi. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know where it is now.
It's hard to remember.
Yeah, I don't know where it is. I guess maybe it's not, but it says that that gender diversity. I mean, if you're like believing everything was created in God's image, then this was another aspect of God's image. And what's interesting is the idea of the Shekhinah, which is the feminine aspect of God. And then there's the Avinu Malkeinu and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Adonai and the Elohim, which is the male aspect of God. So there was a recognition of, and then they fuse. So there's kind of an idea that even in God, there's masculine and feminine, and sometimes one dominates and one time one doesn't. It doesn't. But, and I don't know if they were able to reproduce. It's not clear. I don't have it. But I want to go to Eve now, which is, hold on, I want to stop sharing this and go to Eve, because stop share and go to a different share. I want to go to Eve. Okay. This is actually the text. And I want to ask you the question, well, what do we think of Eve? We know that, it's interesting, because if I take the translation from like the generic Bible translation, always says the fall. This is the fall of humanity was when they ate from this fruit. It's an apple in, like, I think Michelangelo's painting, but it never says what fruit it is. So first of all, we don't know that it was an apple. And by the way, do you think that the logo for Apple, in Mac, is that apple with a bite out of it?
I think it is.
I think it is too. You know what I mean? It looks like the apple that you took a bite out of.
Mm-hmm.
And that apple with the bite, to me, symbolizes wisdom. So I think apple is positive.
I love it.
Okay, so now let's see what we think and what would you have done? What would you have done? I'm curious. So let's just read this first. So Joni, do you want to read?
Yes, I would love to read. And I got unmuted. Okay. Now the serpent was the shrewdest of all the wild beasts that God had made. He
Now, I
said
want to stop you for a minute. Classically, the snake stands for magic and wisdom. It's an eternal life. And also maybe deception, but it definitely stands for wisdom and eternal life. And if you look at the caduceus, the thing that the symbol of the medicine, it has a snake wrapped around it.
Mhm.
And the idea that the snake never dies because it sheds its skin and keeps living. So the snake in ancient pagan female-oriented religion was a very positive symbol and animal, and not the negative one as in this story. Okay, Joni, go ahead.
He said to the woman, did God actually say, you shall not eat any tree in the garden? Eat of any tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it lest you die. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when
Okay, so let's stop for a minute. Okay. So why would the woman, we know that she's going to take a bite. Why would the woman believe the serpent more than God? God said, if you eat it, you'll die. The serpent says, you won't die.
She didn't hear God. She heard it from Adam.
So she didn't.
It's like the telephone game, it down the line, but she didn't hear it from God. And what you just said about the serpent having the positive connotations, as well as the negative, would have led her to, and it was attractive. It was a temptation, needless to say. And if you will know good, I never got this, why it wasn't a good thing to have a knowledge of good and evil. That's morality. However, some interpretations are, it's a knowledge that you're going to die. And we have that as human beings. Animals don't have that knowledge. If you look at it that way as one interpretation, but I always thought it was really wonderful of her to want to know good and evil.
So Rabbi Leader and I were arguing about this on Saturday, and he said, well, she chose death. She knew she was choosing death because it said that, you'll die. And I wasn't sure I agree. I didn't agree, actually, but that's what he thought. Does any other of you, does anyone else have any idea or thoughts of why she would listen to the snake and not to God? Why, what was it that the snake said versus what God said that could have appealed to her?
Maybe she wasn't sure, maybe she thought, I'm going to take that little bite just for the heck of it. You know how you dare something sometime? You're not sure, but I'm going to take a little bite of that. Maybe it'll be okay.
Okay. Yeah. People do that all the time. Merle, I like that, Phyllis.
I don't know. Was it that the snake was visible, was there, and you have no clue who or what God is or might be?
I mean, there's no you asked me, there's no right answer. We're interpreting, but I like that idea that.
I mean, I'm listening to all this and I'm trying to, it's a snake. Do you listen to a snake? I mean, okay, or do you run away from a snake?
Before the curse, also, according to the Midrash, the snake was very handsome, was two-legged or close to two-legged, and very attractive also.
Okay.
If you eat from the the apple, and it's going to give you knowledge between good and evil or right and wrong, that means that she didn't have that ability when she made the wrong choice.
Was it the wrong choice in your opinion?
For her to go against what God told her and to go with the snake, she didn't really know right from wrong.
So it's not her fault.
Well, I wouldn't call it fault. I would just say that you can't expect her to know when she hasn't eaten of the tree of knowledge yet. She doesn't know.
So she's kind of like the simple child.
The simple child.
You know,
I totally get this. I totally get this.
Well, just a child. A child, not necessarily simple. A child doesn't know hot until they touch hot. You can say no, 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 but they don't really learn that until they touch something hot and they know what the word hot means.
So you're okay.
I'm saying she doesn't know the word knowing, understanding, making a decision between right and wrong because she hasn't eaten from the fruit yet.
Okay, so it was kind of a impulse.
It was an inevitable.
It was
I like that.
Okay.
I like that too. I
Okay.
gotta have my bite.
Okay, Cindy.
My image is that Eve was born as an adult or a young adult and didn't have parents to teach her things. I mean, most of what we learn as we reach adulthood is either from school or from parents, and she didn't have that. She only had what God told her. I mean, did she even have language?
Good question. Let's go back to God.
Okay.
They do have
¿La
language.
lavaste? Okay. Okay.
She does have language because we know that Adam named the animals and that, Adam speaks to her afterwards or whatever, and they both talk to God and lie or give excuses, which we'll look at in a minute.
So she was born having a complete language comprehension?
I guess so, because God tells them to go forth and multiply. And, there's a lot. It seems like, yes. Yes. I mean, it's all a myth. So, we'll.
Eso es muy viejo.
Trying to understand the myth.
I know. Athena was born, in battle armor out of Zeus's head, completely adult,
Oh my God.
So it's similar in that respect. Okay, so let's just continue now. Where's the share with the next paragraph, which is, where's Eve? Okay, who was reading? Joni, continue.
Okay. The next paragraph.
Here, so number 6.
So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was a source of wisdom, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew they were both naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths.
Okay, hold on. All right. So according to that paragraph, what's the mentality or the intelligence of Eve, in your opinion? I mean, Nina.
Okay.
You're already, no, now you muted yourself. You were unmuted.
Okay, sorry. Okay. I think the story comes to maybe tell us that they become a unit, that the action of one will also reflect on the other, that once they are together or married, it becomes a unit, one unit. And also I want to go back, and the responsibility is on both,
Okay.
a woman or a man. If they do something bad, they were both punished. They were thrown out of there.
But they both ate.
You're right. That's what I mean. It becomes like, it's like a family. It's like one unit.
Okay.
And another thing is that I want to go back to the thing of the Sarisim, that they say in the Bible, there is not a mitzvah to lay a man with a man, because you're not supposed to waste your seed for nothing.
Right.
You're supposed to, so the same reason that a man doesn't know a woman when she has her period. You cannot just, they wait till they know that she'll get pregnant and have children. they have this whole ceremony when they don't even sleep next to each other while they're with the real religious Jews. So, but there isn't a law that says that a woman cannot be with another woman.
Right.
Because the whole thing of the sperm isn't an issue there.
That's
being
true.
wasted. So
Yeah.
this is why they said, lo mishkav zachar, no laying men with men, but and the reason is lo tishpoch et zaracha lashav. You're not going to waste your seed for nothing. That's it.
So if you have a vasectomy, then you can do it. Okay, thank you. I know you're right. You're absolutely right. So let's go back to Eve, because the sentence, when she saw that it looked good for tasting, it looked beautiful, and it was good for wisdom, she took it. So does that imply she had some intelligence or understanding of what wisdom would be beforehand?
Maybe that's why she was called Isha, comes from the word Esh, fire.
Could be, so does Ish, yeah. Who else? Who was saying something?
Phyllis here.
Yeah, Phyllis?
So I heard a midrash that actually the snake was her spinal cord and it was her inner voice speaking to her, and that she actually was the first scientist.
That's pretty interesting, because she was experimenting and looking.
Yes,
investigating. Curiosity. I actually saw that. I didn't know about Eve being she had curiosity. But I think it's interesting. What do you make of this? She took a bite. It says their eyes were open together, but that doesn't make sense. She took a bite, her eyes were open, and what was her next action?
She gave a bite to him. She gave it to him.
Okay. And, we talk about, especially in Christian lore, she was the temptress. She tempted him. She seduced him to eat it. But if you look at the text, she just said, here, try this. And he did it. He knew as well as she what God had said. And yet he is always, like, for some reason, portrayed as the poor dupe. Or he didn't know what he was doing, or did he not know what he was doing? Because if Risa said neither one of them had intelligence, then Eve ate, had wisdom, and gave it to Adam. What do you think? Why do you think she gave it to Adam?
I think she wanted to share the pleasure of that. But doesn't this also have to do with carnal knowledge? I mean, what they became aware of right after they ate, that they were naked. And then the next step is they made fig leaves for themselves to cover themselves up. So that's a knowledge of sexuality. As Risa said, she was young and innocent. Now she's a teenager and having her period and feeling sexual. So I think
I'm going to challenge you.
Okay.
Okay, so then but God said to them way before this, pru urvu, go forth, go and have sex. God had already told them to have sex before this. So what do you think and there's an interesting, what do you think it means when they knew they were naked? Let's just, hypothesize. If it doesn't mean only literally physically naked, what else could it mean? To be naked. They realized they were naked. Yeah. And then they covered themselves with fig leaves. So there was the sense of, wow, I have no clothes on and my genitals are showing. But could it be anything else? What else could being naked mean?
Well, they opened themselves up to each other. They saw each other. Maybe they had never seen each other like that before. And they realized, hey, he's different than I am. That could be very interesting. So and I look at this whole thing, maybe this is too simplistic. I think Eve was just a woman who just couldn't resist the temptation of taking a bite of that piece of fruit.
And what was the temptation? What was the temptation?
Just she was told not to. It would be bad for her, but she wasn't 100% certain of that, even though God may have said that.
But if I said to you, here's this poison ivy, you're going to break out in a rash, step in it, would you?
No.
She told me it was poison ivy, no, but she didn't know the apple was gonna kill her. Well, I guess.
But it said, here's this incredible papaya, and if you eat it, you'll have wisdom, even though you're not supposed to. I think it's really what the payoff was. The temptation was maybe to become wise. Sue Casa.
It goes back to what Risa said. You don't know hot until you personally experience it. So if she didn't know what wisdom was, then she didn't know what she would get if she ate it, and she didn't know she was doing anything wrong.
Okay, so once she ate it, what do you think her feeling was if then she offered it to Adam?
I think she wanted to share it.
But then what, I mean, if I eat, let's say, horseradish raw, and I go, oh my God, am I going to offer that to somebody else here, try this or not? I mean, what happened? Valerie, did you want to say something?
No, she must have loved it and wanted to share the experience.
Yeah, that's what I think. She must have said, wow, okay, this is great. Here, try this. Merle?
I think a big piece of it is we, especially with Adam and Eve, everything is new to them. And so you experiment. And when your experiments, if you like it, either way, you share your opinion. I mean, if I eat something that I'm not supposed to eat and I get sick from it, they're going to know my opinion right then and there. But which happened a few weeks ago at dinner in a restaurant. But I think just with Adam and Eve, or with an infant, like Risa was saying, everyone experiments with something, and I think you express your feelings. And I think that even though you've been told not to do it, well, I'm going to try it and see how it worked for me, or vice versa.
Okay.
Hey, look at me, Adam.
That's how you learn to live your life, especially then.
Okay. Yeah, there was no role model. Tammy.
I wanted to say that you mentioned when they're naked, and then they had already been told to multiply. But my feeling of nakedness is vulnerability. And therefore, when she realized she was vulnerable, she didn't want to be the only one. And she said, "You're in this with me," and gave it to him.
Okay, so they both became vulnerable. Their eyes were opened, is what it really says. They realized they were naked, and then they covered themselves with fig leaves. Maybe they were cold. I mean, it's not clear. Their eyes are open. Oh my God, I'm freezing. Maybe, animals also only have a limited amount of perception, and then humans, you look at the other person, suddenly they're completely different. Somebody said they're completely different than each other. Yes, I agree. There is a vulnerability. Sue.
I have a question. I'm looking at Genesis in the book here, and it says that they're talking about that he gives her, that she decides, the serpent, God says to them, if you eat or touch this apple, you're going to die.
Right.
But the serpent says you won't die.
Right.
So I don't get, if God's the powerful one, why didn't they die when they ate the apple?
It wasn't true, was it?
I don't understand what the deal is then with the serpent. Obviously, he had more power than God at that point.
Not power, but knowledge or understand. Well, sometimes, when you say things to prevent somebody from doing something, you may exaggerate, you could say, but you're right. Or God decided, if I were doing a midrash, I would say that once they ate it, God God created these humans. And I think God is learning about humanity along with them learning about themselves. And I would say God wasn't prepared to kill them. You know what I mean? He loved them. And when they disobeyed, he punished them, but he did not kill them because maybe God didn't even imagine they wouldn't listen.
I have some potential. Sue Casa brought up something that I hadn't thought of about. They will die.
Yes, not
They're not
now.
going to die immediately, but they will die. They can't live there forever. And that's one of the things of an insight. We spoke of vulnerability, that we know that we're going to die then.
Right. So you will die, but not now, but death will be part of your existence. Your existence will have a finite length. So that's a good.
That's something to live with, you know. I mean, animals don't know that they're going to die, you know, but we do. And that's a burden in a way that we carry with us.
Right. Okay. So let's now look at the rest of how they behave once they have wisdom. How do they use this knowledge? Which is pretty sad in a way. Okay. Where is it? Eve. Okay. Share. Okay, Joni, keep going. Joni, okay. You're muted. Can't unmute.
I did.
Okay.
And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?"
All right, just keep going.
And he said, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." He said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you not to eat?" The man said, "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me the fruit of the tree and I ate." Then the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" The woman said, "The serpent deceived me and I ate."
Okay, so this is a very interesting section. First of all, the narrator writes that you could hear God walking around the garden, which is pretty interesting that God made noise. But God says, "Where are you?" So this is a classical question in Jewish commentary. Doesn't God know where man is? Doesn't he know where he is? So what's the question there? What's the real question? What is God really asking? Miriam, Miriam, what do you have to say? After you unmute. Okay.
It was interesting to listen to others this time, but you always give us a new thought, which I appreciate. And it's this whole idea of they were aware of the nakedness. I like the word that someone used, vulnerability. But how do they even know that there are subtexts and other ideas to the word nakedness? Why do they assume that nakedness was a negative thing? And here we are naked. So, therefore, where did that come from? Is it because they already ate of the fruit, which of course they never used the word apple, they just used the word fruit? Is it because they already ate of it? And not only that, but it puts man in an ever future negative trait. He doesn't say, "I should not have done it." He immediately looks to blame someone.
Looks to blame someone. That's right.
And he therefore, to this day, very few men assume the responsibility.
Okay.
And we can almost make it political.
Well, I think you're right. That's a good question. Why is naked a negative thing? And obviously the narrator or the writer of this second story has an agenda about shame, about bodies, about, there's an agenda here. But there's a famous story, Hasidic story that Martin Buber writes about how one of the most famous rabbis was in Russia was thrown into a Siberian camp. and he was there in jail. And the guard came to him and he said, you know, you're a Jew and you study the Bible and the Old Testament. And I asked, how come it says there that God asks the man, where are you? Doesn't he know where he is? And the Rebbe says, of course, God knows where the man is, but that's not the question. The question is, where are you in your life? Where are you in your moral, on the level of your morality, on the level of your behavior? Where are you in terms of fulfilling what you're supposed to be doing on earth? It's an existential question of where are you? And Adam, as Miriam said, fails. Immediately they use their intelligence, and maybe this was why you're not supposed to eat from this tree. He lies, or he blames. It was the woman, she gave it to me. I was afraid, and the woman, or we could see it as a teenager or a child, as Risa said, an undeveloped person who's just growing up. And, the kids always say, it's not my fault. I didn't do it. He did it. The dog did it. The dog ate my homework. Is kind of basically, he's blaming it on her, and she blames it on the serpent. It's not like this wisdom gave them a lot of, didn't elevate them very much yet. It's just the beginning, right, of humanity. So, what was the value we could ask of this, of eating this at all? Penina, did you want to say something?
Okay, the word nachash means to guess, and the word arom, naked, means also to be cunning.
Okay, nachash is the Hebrew word for snake.
Right, and it's also to guess, lenachesh,
right?
Because you really don't know which way it's going to turn.
Right.
And the word arom, naked, it comes from the word armumi, being cunning, being deceitful. And I think the whole story starts with one of the 10 commandments. But that added, maybe that's the 11th one, that not only that you're not supposed to do it, you cannot also entice somebody else to do something bad. That's really bad. Not only that
Did she entice? Is the question.
Absolutely. She told him, try it. Why not?
Well, is that an entice? As your mother used to say, if your friend jumps off the roof, are you going to jump?
Exactly. Exactly.
No, you're not supposed to.
Yeah, but he did it and he blamed her. So this whole thing, it's a matter of cunning, of deception. And there is a consequence to it. They were thrown out of there. It's one of the things that they weren't supposed to do. Just like the 10 commandments gives you 10 things to do. 5 things to do, 5 things not to do. That was the first thing that the story starts with, the first thing that you should not do. Not once you're already doing it, do not drag somebody else. It's a double sin.
Okay, now let me ask you something, all of you. Do you think that God, in the story, do you think ideally humanity should have stayed in the garden? That staying in the garden was the plan? Or maybe there was some other plan? Do you think that they were supposed to stay in the garden forever?
No.
He gave them the ability to make new gardens.
Well, not yet.
And create new gardens.
If they didn't have any wisdom, they wouldn't be able to. Susan Ehrlich.
No, they weren't supposed to stay because that's not reality. That's not the world. That's paradise. And, the goal is to return to this paradise of things caring for you, but that's not reality. And God probably had it for them to face reality, for the man to work and to be, by your toil you shall live. And I don't think that was the plan. And I think the question, as you put out, was rhetorical of God to start thinking when he says, where are you? Think about it. What have you done? And he'll ask that for Cain and Abel later, or for Cain, what have you done? Think about these things. And just going back to Eve, I think it was wonderful what she was doing, and I think it's more Christians that blame it on the fall. and blame the women and the sexuality, because Judaism is very favorable towards sexuality. And she shared the fruit with her husband because she loved it. And that was an aspect of sharing, and she did not die. Then it tasted good, give wisdom. And so that was an act of goodness, I think. So, and there was one rabbi that when I was teaching Michelangelo's ceiling, he had the temptation and the fall in one scene. And it was that rabbi and I'm forgetting his name, guys, because it was so long ago, who saw Eve in a very positive light and talked and spoke in that way. I can look up his name, but.
Okay, so I want to just take a poll before we close. Is Eve a heroine, a rebel, or a sinner?
A heroine. She's the mother of all women.
Jonas says a heroine.
A heroine.
And I think she's somewhere in the middle.
A little of all three, I would say.
All of the above.
Well, could she be multifaceted? She's multifaceted.
All of the above.
Everybody Cindy, what do you think?
Well, not a heroine because she went against God. I think a rebel.
A rebel. Okay. Risa?
I think she's a heroine.
You think she's a heroine?
Yeah, just get in there and go forward. Figure it out.
You know,
that can be rebellious as well. You're moving forward and creating whatever it is you're expected to create for the rest of the world or our life.
Whatever it's all about.
Valerie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think she's human. She's a rebel. She has the capacity to be everything. And that's what happens. That's what happens when you bite the apple. You have that power to kind of, maybe she's becoming equivalent to she's challenging God and she's taking on those traits,
Okay. Marilyn, I didn't hear from you. What do you think? Is she a sinner, a rebel, or a heroine?
I like it that she took a chance.
You like it that she took a chance. I'll just end with this. According to the Midrash, when God, I love this. First of all, God presided at their wedding and he married them. He was the rabbi at their wedding, but also according to the Midrash, before he kicked them out of the garden, God made clothes for them and clothed them, sewed clothes and made clothes for them. So he was sending them off, but he was not cursing them. He was preparing them in some way to go forward. So thank you so much for studying with me this morning.
Thank you.
Why do they say in French, cherchez la femme?
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was great. Thank you.
You're fun.
Thank you, ladies. I love your comments.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Susan, can you send us the printed? I'd like to have the printed version of this. I started to make notes, but then I realized you had it all written out.
That's fine. I'll send it to you, Doris. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Great class. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.